I hope this fits the subject of this subreddit, and if it doesn't, please tell me where I can possibly get any answers. So let's get things straight. I'm a perfectly normal person, no brain damage or psychological problems whatsoever. As I made sure after going from doctor to doctor after the incident, I had a perfectly normal life and grew up in a house with my parents who loved each other to death. And the same thing with the rest of my family. We were all very close. I've always been especially close to my dad. As we've been camping together, fishing, we would listen to music together all the time, watch movies. We would do all the stuff that dads do with their children. He was my best friend in the whole world, helping me through bad times and being there for me during moments of triumph like getting accepted into university after graduation. Fast forward 3 years and I was 23 and helping my dad in the garage. He was standing in front of the popped open hood of my car, which needed a minor fix. And after he started putting it back together, he asked me to get him a bottle of oil. I turned around and reached for it, but after picking it up, I felt my whole body start to vibrate. Shivers went down my spine, and all the muscles on my body started to twitch uncontrollably. Yet at the same time, I was unable to move. It was like a sleep paralysis episode, but I was wide awake, and it was in the middle of the day. The terror that I felt that second was beyond anything that I could conceive. It lasted for a minute or so, but it felt like hours. After I came to my senses, I dropped the bottle, and it spilled all over the floor, but here's a kicker. My dad, the man I knew my whole life, was nowhere to be seen. The hood of my car was closed as if there was never anything done to it or wrong with it. At first I thought that he went to the bathroom or something, but I went looking for him, but there was no trace of my dad anywhere. When I asked my mom where he was, she just gave me a puzzled look, like I was full of nonsense. When I pushed her about it, she finally told me that my dad died a few months before I was even born. I've apparently never met him. I don't even know what is going on, or what in the world just happened to my whole life. I'm serious. It couldn't have all just been a hallucination. He was a pretty popular guy in my town. My mom, my siblings, and everybody else interacted with him just like I did for 23 years of my life. And after that, the man just vanishes into thin air and into nothing, along with any memory of him, because he apparently had an accident and died when I was not even born yet. I even looked at an old family photo, and there he was, 30-something years younger, but the same man that I grew up loving and caring about all my life. Can anybody tell me what is going on? It's been killing me for the last 3 years. Have I jumped into some kind of a different reality? That's the only thing that I can think of. There's no other rational way to explain this, and even saying that I jumped into an alternate reality is not rational. I see that some things need clarifying, as some people accuse me of lying. I made this throwaway account especially to show you that I'm dead serious, and I don't need any worthless internet points from a website. I wanted to share a true story that really happened to me, believe it or not. As for the photos on my phone, it's the same deal with the family pictures that I had. All of them are gone. He was a huge Allman Brothers fan, for example, and collected all their albums. He would listen to it in the car over and over again for a few months. Now, all we have at home from his collection are older vinyls and CDs from the late 1980s. As for my medical examination, I had an MRI scan done as well as an ultrasound and an EEG. All came out clear. My brain is perfectly fine, and I have the documentation to prove it. Many years ago, when I was only 6 or 7 years old, I lived with my family in a big house on the countryside, and it took about 5 minutes to drive to that house from the village. My parents built it in the 90s on a piece of land surrounded by woods and fields. The nearest house was my aunt's, but you had to walk for a while to reach it. We had quite a big garden, which was closed with a fence and 2 gates, a hen house and a garage. I used to go for walks quite often, and my parents knew that I would not stray far, so they weren't too worried about me at all. One summer morning, I go for one of my usual walks, but this time I decided to go off on a dirt road near my garden because I'd never seen what was there. I walk for a while and arrive to a house that looked like an old dilapidated farmhouse. Suddenly I hear 2 voices and get scared. But then 2 kids, my age I think, come up to me and ask me why I was there. We chatted for a while, and then their dad shows up, and we all played football in their garden until I had to go back home because the sun was starting to set. So I said goodbye to them, and I left. I'm not sure whether I saw the two kids once more or not, but these are the details I'm sure of. The two kids were twins. I clearly remember them saying this, and even having the same hair color. Their mom wasn't there, and their father told me that she was in Rome, but it felt very uncomfortable, like the kids knew that that wasn't true, or that wasn't the case. They wanted my cat. Their dad said my cat, which I told the children about, was theirs, and they had lost it weeks before, but I could keep him anyways. Nobody entered the house while I was there. I think it was locked. Their black car was parked near the small football field. I remember I liked the two kids, but I was super scared of the dad. And I know it may seem a little bit weird, but that's okay, because I hadn't recalled any of this for years, until I talked about this with my mom, and it came out that apparently this never happened. We were talking about memories in that old house, and I said I wanted to find those kids. She didn't know what I was talking about and got scared when I told her everything. I didn't think about it that much. I just thought maybe my mom had forgotten. But then I asked my dad, and he didn't remember either. It was like nobody but me remembered it happened. But the very creepy thing in this story is that I told my dad about the dirt road I took that day, and he said that that dirt road never existed either. But I was sure that it did, so I went to the old house with my dad to prove it, and he was right. This scared the hell out of me and made me think about other weird episodes in that house. It's been a while since I told this story to somebody, but I wanted to tell it here because it was so strange. I am 17 years old, and a year ago, I had gotten into a relationship with a very good friend I met online. I went to a stream and we struck up a friendship, grew very close, and eventually got together. We'd talk every day and would voice chat nearly every day. We even met in person a couple of times. Eventually, we broke up due to neither of us being able to meet each other's emotional needs. We were still friends, but gradually drifted apart. At the time, my friends were still his friends, and they would talk daily to each other. One day, out of curiosity, I go to check his stream since he still did that occasionally, and I go to find out that the account never existed or was removed. I think, okay, maybe he got banned or deleted his account or something. So I go to talk to a mutual friend to see what's up, and they have no idea who I'm talking about or what's going on. When I asked, they said, "Who's that? What community?" Thinking that they're joking, and I said, "You know, my ex-boyfriend. I literally dated him for nearly a year. You talk to him every day." And they utterly were confused at the fact that I was ever in a relationship with somebody that didn't exist. Okay, whatever. I go ask some other mutual friends. None of them have any idea who I'm talking about. Getting disturbed, I check his Twitter, Discord, and Facebook. None of them exist. The Discord part is very important since me and my other friends would stay up often hours talking to him in his Discord. That Discord no longer exists, and the conversations that involved him in other servers or DMs also no longer exist. Freaking out, I asked my mother about him, since she was literally with me when I first met him. She looked at me confused and had no idea what I was talking about. No traces of him exist as far as I can tell. The only thing that tells me that he had in fact existed is a photograph of him in my bedroom. I really have no clue what the hell is going on. I was diagnosed with a few disorders and got quite a few brain scans, but nothing of me being delusional was ever found. And my parents had never mentioned me being delusional. Did I fall into an alternate universe or something? Maybe there's a rational explanation for this, but I cannot for the life of me figure that one out. I remember when I was younger, around 7, that my parents were friends with another couple, and they had a son my age. They'd frequently come over our house to visit, and myself and the son would play together. The most vivid memory being with a red viewfinder that had lots of Disney slides, but the weirdest thing that I can recall is that I remember myself and the boy playing together in the attic of my house, even though the attic wasn't discovered until I was around 13 years old. On one occasion, I remember my family meeting the couple at a local place with a kids' play area in the back with one of those plastic trees with a face on it and a sliding swing attached. Myself and the boy snuck off over the fence and wandered up a big hill. I distinctly remember this as being my last memory of this family and the boy. I asked my parents about this the other day, and they have no recollection of ever knowing this family or the events that I remember. They can't even remember me having a viewfinder toy. I've described the family and the boy to them in detail, but they genuinely do not have any memory of them. Have I just fabricated the whole memory, somehow or in some way unknowingly? Or could this be something else? A few years back, I worked for an ISP and worked nights on a 4-to-4 shift pattern. There was a guy from New Zealand that was called Chris. The company got bought out and I took early redundancy, and I had done some traveling and took some time off. I returned to my old employer to visit and to catch up with my workmates for drinks to basically see how things were. They were a great group of people that always made me feel at home and wanted to do some catching up. I asked about this person, Chris, yet nobody remembers him. No one even recalls a guy from New Zealand. Now, we were a close group of about 40 of us in total, yet nobody recalls such a person named Chris from New Zealand. There's no online profile of him either. It's like he never existed. I forgot about this, but there is one person who did see him, and that is my now wife. She's American and came over to visit me at work a few times. I had invited her to sit in during the night shift the first few days, so she did meet this guy, Chris. She remembers this guy from New Zealand, but nobody else seems to have any memory of him at all. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound completely crazy and impossible, but if you don't believe it, please just humor me and act like you do believe it. Try to respond with advice or any other thing you'd say if you believed it, because it really happened to me and I'm so confused about it all. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just hoping somebody on this sub can help me figure this out. About a month ago, my best friend and I met a guy called Mark at a party, and the three of us got really close really fast. He and my bestie hit it off really well and had that whole pre-relationship thing going where they were all cute and flirty and slowly falling for each other, while Mark and I became like best friends. We saw him multiple times, went on adventures, had sleepovers, etc. He even befriended some of our friends, and our roommate saw him a lot all over the place as well. About a week ago, Mark seemingly cut us off. My best friend and I were complaining about this to one of our roommates, who went like, "Who's Mark?" And when we reminded her, she didn't recall any of it. She had gone on multiple adventures and joined the three of us during sleepovers at a lot of our crazy shenanigans, and couldn't remember any of it at all. The messed up thing is that no one but my best friend and I remember him or had any memories of him. We can't find him on social media anywhere, and his number's out of service. We have no pictures of him, and the only texts and messages the two of us have sent out about him are still there. But everybody else's texts that have anything to do with Mark or any plans he organized are all gone, from not only their devices but both of ours as well. The only reason I know I'm not crazy is because my best friend is experiencing this too. Otherwise, I would have been scared for my sanity and doubted whether any of it actually happened. Neither of us have any kinds of pictures at all with Mark, and the videos that we have are all gone. The messed up thing is that we only ever heard stories about people in Mark's life. He never told us names, nor did he ever introduce us to any of these people at all. My best friend and I are trying to figure out what happened and if we can get any trace of the fact that he ever existed, and are going to ask everybody we know that met him and look for any records or anything of our time with him or with anybody else. I apologize for the long and rambly post. I'm not the most coherent right now as I've lost a lot of sleep trying to figure this out. Any ideas on what my bestie and I could do, or any ideas for how somebody could just basically disappear along with all records of their existence? And why is it that only two of us vividly remember a whole month where he was huge and a regular presence in our lives, but nobody else? During my first year of high school, I was friends with a guy, let's call him Vincent, but at the end of the year he moved and I hadn't seen him since, and it was 3 years since that time. Last night I thought about him and I decided to search for him on Facebook to see what he looks like now, but I didn't remember his last name, so I searched him on my friends list, and he wasn't there, so I thought maybe he unfriended me. He changed his name or just deleted his account. I tried to search his name because if he didn't delete his Facebook, we'd probably still have friends in common, but he wasn't there. Today I talked to my friends about Vincent, but nobody remembered him. It's only been 3 years and we were all really good friends with him. They could have never have forgotten him, and I still remember us talking about him in the 10th grade. But since then there's been nothing. I even talked to his best friend at the time. He was kind of rude when I asked him about Vincent. It's not surprising that he was rude since he's always been rude since I was friends with Vincent. And when I asked him about him, he told me that he had never heard of him either. I have no idea what to think about any of this, as it is very perplexing to me. What happened to Vincent? Is there some kind of a mental condition where you just invent somebody else or think about somebody else being real? It wasn't like an imaginary friend because other people were interacting with Vincent at the same time that I was. I still remember his house and his mom. It's weird because I don't even remember his last name, and I'm usually good with names, as I still remember people's last names from kindergarten. Is it really a glitch in the Matrix? I really believe in these stories, maybe a little bit too much. Maybe I'm a little bit too naive, but I never thought something like this would ever happen to me at all. Does anybody have any ideas of what might have happened to Vincent? This last summer, a complete stranger knocked on my door and started talking to me like they knew me. I had no idea who it was, and something told me to play like I knew them. I looked down at their shoes and I recognized the shoes and leggings of my next-door neighbor. The voice was theirs as well. I looked up and the face morphed into my neighbor's face. I said I had a headache and went back inside and started crying. I thought that I had lost my mind. I went to my doctor. She said, "Oh no, you must have an atypical migraine. It happens. Okay, I guess." My husband comes home from working from out of town, and the neighbor just happens to come over to say hi. My husband acts very rude. Well, not too rude, but like he didn't know the person. And as soon as she left, he said to me, "Who the heck was that?" And I said, "It's our neighbor." He said, "Oh." And that was kind of the end of the conversation. I can't stop thinking about it, though. We've lived next to her for 3 years. What could have happened? How did she change her face? "6:30 a.m. the alarm goes off, and we go through our usual routine of making sure my daughter is up and getting ready for school. Making sure she has everything packed and everything that she needs, and then off to the bus she goes. This year, though, the school has given every student a Chromebook. I guess this is in case they have to shut things down at the actual school and do homeschooling. Later on in the day, my wife points out that my daughter's Chromebook is on the shelf. Jesus Christ, she's going to be ticked off when she comes home. Both my wife and I literally had looked at it, lifted it up to double check. I had to go to my father-in-law's and wouldn't be home when my daughter got home. And then my wife sends me a message asking me if I dropped off the Chromebook at our daughter's school, and I replied that I didn't. When my daughter gets home, my wife had said to her, "Hey, sorry about your Chromebook. Your dad thought that he put it in your backpack, but then he saw that he left it on the shelf." My daughter looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" and told her that she's had the Chromebook all day. My wife looked at the shelf and the Chromebook was gone. This was our first glitch in the Matrix, and I must say that I got a little bit excited, but I was also a little bit scared at the same time. This happened to me about 2 weeks ago. A couple of days before I started college, I went to this hairdresser to get my hair cut, and I can 100% remember doing so, and I can even remember the conversation that I had with the barber. The next day I wake up and my hair is fully grown back, and it hasn't been cut at all, like the whole event was erased from history, and my family has no recollection of me getting a haircut at the barber's. I feel like I'm going crazy, and I've looked up theories online and have come to two possibilities. Either I've traveled to a parallel dimension, or my whole existence has been glitched, and I remember it, but it never happened. I got on Route 17 South by the Riverside Terrace. I had to wait on the on-ramp as a tractor trailer pulled into the gas station behind the RT. I passed two slow cars and I pulled into the slow lane, which is rare for me. I left them behind and nobody was in front of me as far as I could see. I was 25 seconds, I estimated, from the bridge by the suburban cap sign that is always lit up. Only it was off, which I thought was very odd. All the cars are far behind me, coming from the Sheridan Mahwah area. I picked up my phone really quickly and I checked for 1 second the messages, and I checked the time, which was 9:48, and I checked the car clock, which was the same as my cell phone. I sat down the phone and my view alters, and it's extremely bright outside of my car. I thought that I teleported to somewhere sunny, but it was just bright lights. I was now in traffic with cars all around me, and me driving in the slow lane with cars on my rear end, which never really happens at all, like I mentioned earlier. And that tractor trailer that was parked at that gas station was in lane to my left and front. The road that had been curving slowly left was now curving hard right, and I was going underneath a bridge. My lane peels off, and I figured that I'd get off here and find out where I teleported to. If it was 17s, then I'd know the exit. Well, it was a turnaround by the Mahwah Sheridan, and it brought me back to the 17s. I checked for missing time, but strangely enough, both clocks, my cell phone and the car clock, both read 9:48. Then I drove back past everything that I had just driven by moments earlier. The suburban cab sign was still out. For years I thought that I had teleported, but now that I think about it, it makes more sense that I swapped places with another me for that day. After I got home, something else happened that I thought was really weird. One outlet in my house moved several inches from where it had always been. I thought that was super bizarre. I moved back to Illinois from Dallas about a month ago and hadn't seen my cat in about 7 months. I know what my cat looks like, and I look at saved pictures that I have from her from time to time. My mom would send me current photos while I was gone as well. She is a skinny gray cat with a triangular-shaped facial structure. I've had her since she was a kitten, and she's always been that way. The day that I arrived home, I called her name expecting her to come running to me, crying, and being her dramatic self, but she just stood there and watched me. She let me pet her, but she wasn't like her usual self. I was immediately shocked at how round her face was, and how it looked like she had put on some healthy weight. As I mentioned earlier, she's always been very skinny. I brought this up to my mom, but my mom didn't really seem to notice anything. It felt like I literally had a different cat, as crazy as that might sound. The very next day I woke up and went into the living room, and when she saw me, she acted like it was the first time she'd seen me, and did the whole dance and crying thing, and jumped on me, and she followed me around, being all like a clingy baby, like she hadn't seen me for months. The other thing is that she looked normal now. It's like she lost about 2 or 3 pounds or more overnight, and her head was back to being its normal shape. I'm convinced the initial cat wasn't my cat, and at some point they switched places, which I know sounds crazy, but that's the only way that I can explain it. Of course, I can never prove this, and nobody else noticed anything, even when I brought it up to them. Like my mom, however, I know that it happened. I don't know how to explain this or what happened, but the first time this happened, I was just playing Roblox on my PC, and then during a millisecond, it went dark. Completely dark. Like I couldn't see anything other than my PC and my table, but everything else around me was dark. It's like it was nighttime. It was during a millisecond, but I'm sure that I didn't blink. The second time I was chilling on my bed, and then I decided to look outside my window, and I fixated on the sun, and it happened again. The sun wasn't there for a millisecond. The trees, the clouds, the birds, everything had just disappeared. It was void and oblivion. And no, again I didn't blink. I still could see my room, but it was pitch black and dark. If somebody could explain to me what happened to me, or if there's some kind of an explanation for this, I'd like to know what happened, because it's really bothering me. This happened a few years ago. My wife got pulled over for speeding on a barren highway, which really nobody takes. And the state trooper shows up, and he was just chilling and chit-chatting, which is common in rural areas. He was in the process of writing her a ticket when, at the last second, his radio went off, and it said, "Bodies all over I-80 between some exits that I cannot remember at this time." And he said never mind and tore off the ticket and hands it to my wife. It gets really weird because she knows that he said his name and she swears that he signed it. I didn't remember his name at the time. In fact, at that time I was more obsessed by that radio statement about the bodies all over I-80. Then, when I looked at the ticket, all it had was a date on it. And I said, "Sweet, we got out of a ticket." And she said, "No, he signed it." And when I showed it to her, she looked at it and she looked like she saw a ghost, as she was almost sure that he signed it. But there was no signature. We Googled and Facebook his name and this incident that happened on the interstate with the bodies, but we never found anything. It's a rural area and it could have been animal body parts or something, but we didn't find any trace or any sign of anything like that at all. A few months ago, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling especially fidgety and restless. I had this strong urge to go outside for some reason, and while I don't normally pay attention to these kinds of impulses, this time I did. I went outside and brought a stool to sit in the middle of the yard, and I sat down and I just stared at the stars. I knew that I was going to see something interesting. My body was tense and crackling with it. Soon enough, I saw a strange red light move across the sky, and there was no tail. It didn't break up. It was just this weird, energy-laden light that appeared, moving directly across the line of my vision, and then it blinked off. It took my breath away, honestly. But I'm a logical person. I immediately thought, okay, that was cool, but was it something natural? It had to be. Maybe it was a shooting star. I hadn't seen a shooting star in so long. I'm not sure what one looks like anymore, I thought to myself. At that very moment, a bright white shooting star streaks across the sky right where I was watching. I was pretty spooked and I yelled, "Thank you," and I ran inside. But ultimately I felt very calm, like I had seen what I was meant to see, and then I just fell right asleep. I also had this immediate sense that somebody was trying to get through to me and thought that I was a total idiot for doubting the first light that I saw. Like, okay, you want a shooting star? Here you go. And then I saw a shooting star. It definitely felt like I was bumping up against something on the edge of reality, something that was beyond comprehension. So here is my story. I'm a gamer, and one game that I absolutely love is Fallout. Well, as a gamer would know, in Fallout 4 you come across posters, and one is of Mr. Pebbles, which was the first cat in outer space. Now, I'm personally a cat lover and I have 3, so I decided that I needed to physically own this poster, so I went on Amazon and ordered it. It arrived and I hung it up. Now this poster had the same color as the American flag, which was red, white, and blue. Now, as the weeks go by, I see the poster at least a dozen times a day, but one day I noticed that the color flipped on me. Instead of having red and white stripes like it should have, it flipped to having blue and white stripes. In fact, all the colors flipped on the flag on the poster. Now I know for a fact that it was identical to the American flag, but now it's not. Do you think maybe a timeline switched with another one, where somebody else or another version of me has this old poster? I went for a walk in a suburban area where I was staying at the time. As I walked down the street, I noticed a 2-story dark green Victorian-style home that I hadn't seen before. As I'm looking at it, it shimmers and I blink to clear my vision. When I opened up my eyes, it was a single-story home. This white ranch home with a picket fence instead of a chain-link fence like it had before. The Victoria-style home was gone. I still freak out when I think about it because it was so vivid and clear. A few months ago, I was sitting watching TV and suddenly I heard a sound that made my body feel like it was shaking, and my dog started to bark, and my dog sounded real scared. The last few seconds after it ended, I ran and I asked my brother if he had heard the same thing. He was taking a bath, and the bathroom is like 5 to 7 meters away from the living room, and he said that he didn't hear anything at all. I'm from Brazil, and here we don't have any earthquakes or anything like that. I looked on my street, and we just have these big machines working outside, but I don't think that's where this shaking or vibration came from. I know that something like this happens all around the world, but I don't know what it is or how to explain it, other than to say that I was shaking and vibrating. The sound was a lot like a hum, but with my ears closed. That's the best way that I can describe it, and like I said, my brother didn't hear or feel anything, so I'm at a loss right now. I went missing for 2 hours at my intern workplace. It was my second day there when I found the basic needed facilities like toilets, staircases, lifts, emergency exits, and so on. For the level that I'm on, the toilet is one way, so there was a corner you turn to get to the toilets. At the corner there is a camera that points away from the doors, so if you have to go to the toilet, you naturally would pass the camera twice. I go to the office, sit down my things, and I went to the toilet. I finished my business and headed back down to the office where I see my supervisor and the other person that I'm supposed to be shadowing. The rest of the people on the team were also standing over my stuff, talking and looking concerned. When I entered, one of my friends who was an intern at that place as well saw me and honestly said, "She's back," with so much relief. I looked very confused and I just said that I went to the toilet. Then my supervisor replied to what I said by asking, "You were in the toilet for 2 hours?" And I was like, "No, I was only there for 10 minutes max." My supervisor then asked me, "Where have you been? We all thought you were missing." To which I say, "What? I just got here. I went to the toilet. Did nobody go check the toilet when I was in there?" My supervisor said nobody was inside when they did, and I couldn't believe when I heard that. And then he said, "Well, at least you're okay and back to work." I was still confused, but I brushed it off. And during some free time in between tasks, I went to the security officer and asked to see the camera footage of the toilet on my level. He showed me and saw that I only passed the camera 2 times, and in between them, I saw one of my colleagues go into the toilet and coming out a few minutes apart. I thanked the officer and went about my work. So yeah, I disappeared for 2 hours at my workplace in the toilet, and that toilet only has one entrance and exit, so I don't know where I could have gone, but I know where I was. Sadly, this isn't the first time that this happens. It happens almost every semester on campus. The longest that I've disappeared is for like 8 to 10 hours. My friend is well aware of this too. I have had medical screenings done and psychological evaluations, but everything seems normal with me. The toilet is also with 3 stalls, but my coworker swears that she opened all 3 and I wasn't in there. People have asked for more details about the camera footage, so just to let you know, I'm not able to get a copy of it due to actual security issues, but here are some more details. The video is time-stamped with the time and the hours recording at the bottom. I went in at 8 hours and 34 minutes and came out at 10 hours and 30 minutes. My colleague went in at 9 hours and 1 minute and came out at 9 hours and 8 minutes. The camera caught both of us going in and coming out. But, of course, nothing was captured inside, as you don't have security cameras that actually are in bathrooms. The only weird thing was that the camera itself had shifted for a bit, for a few seconds to a minute, and during that time it kind of glitched on its own. And this happened at the 9 hours and 12 minute mark. But there was no way that I could have exited the toilet and walked back without the camera at the office door catching me, so I know that there's evidence of me going into the restroom and coming out. But why did it take me 2 hours, and for me it only felt like it was 10 minutes? This is bizarre, and like I said, this isn't the first time that something like this has happened.